famous events at Fatima in 1917 were to be followed 15 years later by another series of apparitions, this time in Belgium, in the towns of Beauraing and Bano. The war, hunger, and religious persecution which the lady spoke of in Fatima were well underway by 1932. A worldwide depression raged, spawning massive unemployment, breadlines, and bloody riots. The communists had come to power in Russia. In Italy, the fascist Mussolini ruled, his government persecuting the church. And in Germany began the consolidation of Adolf Hitler's power. Situated between France and Germany, two of the most powerful nations in Europe, tiny Belgium was painfully familiar with war. Its early history was marked by sieges, its people overrun repeatedly by powerful nations hungry for territory. It had fallen to German imperialist expansion in the First World War, enduring foreign military rule for 4 long years. In the Second World War, it was again to be overrun by the Germans and recovered its total freedom only after the victory of the Allied forces. It was to this nation, steeped in a history of waiting for liberation, that the lady was to appear.
60 miles southwest of Brussels, in the Walloon or French-speaking part of Belgium, is Beauraing, a small town of about 2,000 inhabitants. Located near the border of the Belgian Ardennes, it nestles in a shallow valley over which the ruins of an ancient castle loom. Situated near important crossroads, it was, at the time of the apparition, a commercial and administrative center in the province of Namur, and many of the villagers who were once staunch Catholics had drifted away from the church. The Labour Party, both Marxist and anti-Catholic, had carried the district in many elections. The visions began in the winter of 1932 on a Tuesday evening, November 29th. 15-year-old Fernande Voisin and her 11-year-old brother Albert left their house to fetch their sister Gilberte from the academy, a boarding school run by the Sisters of the Christian Doctrine of Mary. On the way to the convent, they stopped by the house of the widow de Jambre. They took along with them the widow's 2 daughters, 14-year-old André and little 9-year-old Gilberte, for they were good friends. Along the way, the mischievous children rang doorbells of different houses for fun. The convent of the sisters sat in the corner of Rochefort Road and a railway embankment. This embankment ran behind the convent and its grounds. In the convent garden against the embankment stood a grotto of the Lady of Lourdes. The children arrived at the convent gate at 6:30 p.m. Albert rushed across the garden path to ring the front doorbell, but the nuns did not answer immediately. He turned around and suddenly exclaimed, "Look! A lady in white is walking in the air above the railway bridge." The girls thought he was joking, but seeing the wonder on his face, they turned to look. Above the grotto and the railway bridge, they saw the luminous figure of a lady in white walking on air, her feet hidden by a light cloud. Frightened, the children rang the bell insistently and pounded on the door. Upon hearing their story, Sister Valeria, the doorkeeper, scolded the children, saying they had merely seen a branch move in the wind. She could not see the lady. Gilberte Voisin, who now came to the door not knowing what was going on, suddenly also caught sight of the lady smiling at her. Upset, the children fled down the garden path to the street and back to their homes. Neither Mrs. de Jambre nor the Voisins believed the children's story. The next day, December 30, the children saw her again as before and came home to the widow de Jambre explaining, "We've seen her. It is the Blessed Virgin, and she is so much more beautiful than any of her statues." Furious that someone may be playing tricks on her children, Mrs. de Jambre, along with friends and neighbors, accompanied the children to the convent at dusk on December 1st. The lady appeared several times in the garden that evening, but only the children saw her. During the 4th time, the lady appeared beneath the arched branch of a hawthorn tree. They could now see her closely. She appeared to be between 18 and 20 years old. She had deep blue eyes, dark eyebrows, and a fresh complexion. Short luminous rays formed a crown around her head. Her veil came down to under her arms. She wore a high-necked, loose flowing gown, which in the words of the children appeared like watered silk shot through with glints of blue. The rosary, which in later visions would appear hanging down her right arm, was not yet visible. Throughout most of the apparition, her hands were clasped together as if in prayer. Then, just before she vanished, she opened her arms in such a gentle movement that the children were distressed at her departure. The apparition set the pattern for subsequent ones. The lady would appear under the hawthorn branch. The children would throw themselves on their knees with such force and producing an audible thud on the cobblestones that examinations would show their garments severely frayed at the knee. Then they would pray the rosary in high-pitched voices far from their natural ones. Their mothers consulted the village pastor, Father Léon Lambert, who advised the children not to speak to anyone. But the whole village was already talking. The Voisins and the Desjambres were fast becoming the laughing stock of the town. Mother Théophile, the convent superior, was determined to put an end to what she called a farce. On December 2nd, Friday, she ordered the convent gates locked and 2 fierce dogs put out on the yard at dusk. But as the children knelt on the cobblestone street outside the gate that evening, the lady still appeared to them. Albert asked, "Are you the Immaculate Virgin?" The lady smiled and nodded. "What do you want of us?" he asked again. "Always be good," she said. The lady's first words. She appeared to them 2 more times that night, and on the 3rd time she asked, "Is it true that you will always be good?" "Yes," cried little André. "We will always be good." Then the lady disappeared. On December 4th, Mother Théophile softened and allowed the children to return to the street, but still locked the convent gate. When the lady appeared, Albert asked for a miracle and for her to heal some friends, but she only smiled and did not answer. He then asked when they should come back. The lady replied, "On the feast of the Immaculate Conception." Fernand then ventured, "Do you want to have a chapel built?" "Yes," the lady answered, and vanished. By this time, a crowd around the children had begun to grow, for even people from the Flemish section of the country came to Beauraing. On December 8th, a crowd of 15,000 milled around them. The children were examined by 4 doctors throughout the vision. They were pinched, slapped, pricked, stung with penknives. Flashlights were shown into their eyes, all of which produced no response. Fernand said, "I could see nothing, neither fence nor tree nor crowd, only the Holy Virgin who smiled at us." Gilberte Voisin was oblivious to the flame of a lighted match held under her left hand. No trace of a burn was found after the vision. Little Gilberte had begun weeping during the course of the apparition. Asked why, the child answered, "Because she is so beautiful." After the 8th of December, the apparition no longer came with the suddenness of earlier visions. The children had to wait and pray. Some evenings, the lady did not come at all. On December 17, the lady asked for a chapel. On December 21st, she said, "I am the Immaculate Virgin." Fernand asked her on the 23rd of December, "Why do you come?" The reply, "That people might come here on pilgrimages." On December 28th, the lady announced to the children, "Soon I shall appear for the last time." On the 29th of December, 8,000 people, including 37 physicians, gathered around the hawthorn tree. The lady appeared to the children, and when she opened her arms in the usual gesture of farewell, Fernand saw in the region of the lady's breast a golden heart the size of an orange, from which emanated short golden rays. On December 30, with 10,000 people present, André and the elder Gilbert also saw the heart, and to Fernand the lady said, "Pray, pray very much." On December 31st, the gold heart was visible to all 5 children. On January 1st, 1933, the lady said to Gilbert Poisson, "Do pray always." On January 2nd, with 12,000 people praying in the winter rain, the lady said to the children, "Tomorrow I will speak to each of you separately." The lady appeared for the last time on January 3rd. A crowd of 25,000 thronged the place of the apparition that evening. The children said 2 decades of the rosary. Then 4 of them suddenly fell to their knees, giving a joyful shout. But Fernand wept, because this time she could not see the vision. The lady was resplendent, and her smile radiant as never before. She spoke first to little Gilbert, saying, "This is between you and me, and I ask you to speak of it to no one." She confided to the child a secret, and then said, "Goodbye." Gilbert broke into weeping. To the older Gilbert, she revealed what would later be remembered as the great promise of Beauraing. "I will convert sinners." She told Gilbert a secret, and then said goodbye. To Albert she also revealed a secret and bid him farewell. To André she announced, "I am the Mother of God, the Queen of Heaven. Pray always." She said goodbye, and as she vanished, she revealed to the child her golden heart. The children were taken to the convent to be questioned, but Fernand, who had not seen the lady, remained praying in tears. Suddenly, she and many others in the crowd heard what sounded like a clap of thunder. She was thrown on her knees, and a huge ball of fire appeared under the hawthorn and burst with a crash. Then Fernand saw the lady. "Do you love me?" the lady asked. "Yes," cried Fernand fervently. "Do you love my son?" the lady asked again. "Yes," cried Fernand even more fervently. "Then sacrifice yourself for me." The lady glowed with a brilliance never seen before, extending her arms in a farewell gesture, revealing her golden heart. She said goodbye and was gone. Fernand sank to the ground and wept.
In the early stages of the apparitions, the residents of Beauraing had themselves been quite skeptical. But as time went on and more of them saw the children during the apparitions, the skepticism and disbelief all but vanished. Among the first to be convinced that the children were telling the truth were their parents, for it was perceived that even when questioned separately, they never contradicted each other, not even over the smallest details. And, as if to give credence to the lady's promise that she would convert sinners, the villagers began to return to the church. Among them, the father and mother of the Voisin children, who had neither attended Mass nor received the sacraments for the past several years. As was to be expected, the story of the apparitions became an overnight sensation and caused an uproar throughout Belgium and the rest of Europe. Since there had been no great sign for everyone to see, such as the miracle of the sun in Fatima, Beauraing bashing became fashionable. Many books and articles were written dismissing the apparitions as mere hallucinations or as an outright fraud. But the opposition began to lose ground as the results were observed. By the end of the first year, approximately 2 million pilgrims had visited the site, cures and favors had been granted, and many pilgrimages resulted in amazing conversions.
Even though the apparitions had ended, the children still went to the Hawthorne every day to say the rosary. They never benefited financially from the incident. Instead, their families suffered losses as pilgrims and curiosity seekers trampled through their gardens and their homes. But both families bore these ordeals with amazing patience. Not one of them entered the religious life. All later married, had children, and tried to live as normal lives as possible, following what they believed were the vocations that God had given them. Fernand and Andre have since been laid to rest, and those who still survive today continue to shun the limelight and have remained greatly devoted to the Blessed Mother, maintaining that they were only instruments through whom she had given her messages to the world.
Mainly in the beginning, they were grievously insulted to be deceivers, and that was very hard. Even they got letters of people, even Christian people, telling them, you are liars. And I think that's a very heavy burden to be suspected like that. Albert Voisin told me, it is a very heavy burden to carry. But, he said, we have done nothing to deserve such an honor. But nevertheless, it is a beautiful honor which has fallen upon us.
In 1935, the Bishop of Namur, the diocese to which Beauraing belongs, appointed an Episcopal Commission to look into the apparition. On December 7, 1942, Pope Pius XII signed a decree giving the Bishop of Namur the authority to investigate the events at Beauraing and pronounce his judgment on them. On February 2, 1943, the bishop then authorized public devotions to Our Lady of Beauraing. And on the 2nd of July, 1949, the bishop officially recognized the supernatural character of the events.